Guys, attendance is open, so please put it. We'll wait for a couple more minutes. The attendance is still low. Okay. Uh, Guys, my broadband has tried to connect from my mobile phone. Just like give me 1 more minute.
No problem.
Okay, I hope you guys can somehow hear me now. Uh, if
Yes,
the yeah, if the voice breaks, please pardon me. This is from my mobile's hotspot. Uh, my broadband stopped at just the wrong time. Okay, so let me try. Uh, okay, someone has become the presenter. Can the person who has become the presenter make me the presenter? I'm not sure who it is. I have to see. I think it is. Who could it be? Sunny. Sunny, can you please make me the presenter? Yeah, really sorry guys for this. Uh, I can't see uh, the request that you become. So I'm not the presenter. I'm not sure what is the issue. I should be the presenter, but yeah, now I have become the presenter. Just a minute. Okay. Okay, so let's start, guys. We've already spent a lot of time, so let us start. Okay, so so first of all, in the previous week, what all things we discussed? We discussed that in order to build a particular application, there are at least two approaches that we know of now. One is the structured approach. The structured approach is basically the approach where you create structures and you write some functions over it. That was the first approach, and this is the approach that is there with C, right? The second approach that we realized was the approach where we created classes and objects, and one of the basic differences that you could see was that in the former, the data and the operations were basically independent, but in the latter, the data and the operations were essentially packaged inside the same class, same container, right? This is the major difference that you saw between the two approaches. Now, when you are trying to build an application, when you are trying to, let us say, work on a particular project, there are certain things that you need to do. Okay, what these things are, let us just start to try to get into this. So the first thing you have to do is you have to understand that particular domain. Okay, domain as in, the best example that I can start off with is that, let us say you have your own business. Okay, so some people certainly might be coming from a family of business, right? So in that case, your family would probably, someday sit with you and they'll try to give you a, give you a brief overview of how your business works, right? This is nothing nothing related with computer science. This is about understanding the business part, right? So they'll tell you, okay, in our business, this is the input, this is the output. If we are producing something, then this is what we produce. If we are importing something, this is what we import. If this is what we are if we are exporting something, this is what we export. And then this is our overall chain, right? I mean, we send our stuff to these wholesalers, then these wholesalers probably send it to retailers, or that we send our stuff directly to retailers, we don't know, right? The overall idea is that uh, they'll tell you about how the business works, right? They'll tell you from this point to this point, this is how the business works. Now, this is something that you need to know. Let us say if you want to contribute to your family business with the help of some application, right? So let's say you say, okay, I'm gonna, do some kind of automation, so that as soon as the product is ready, um the shipping labels are printed, for instance. I'm just taking a very simple example. So in that case, what are the things that you need to know? You need to know the complete process of how your overall business works, right? So in whenever we are going to build an application, the first thing that we need to know is we need to know about the domain. Okay, the domain in which this particular application belongs to. And to know that, you need some domain knowledge, right? You need to model the domain itself. That is the first thing you need to do, right? You need to figure out how the particular domain behaves. So this is known as domain modeling, and whatever is the output of this step is known as domain model. Now, the people who actually create these domain models are usually not computer scientists, okay? These are people who understand one particular domain. So you will probably have a banking expert who can prepare a domain model for you to understand the banking domain. Similarly, there could be a person who understands manufacturing, for example. Okay, so that person can tell you how the overall manufacturing domain works. So these are not computer science things. These are basically people who know a particular field in the real world, and they give you some inputs. Okay, they prepares a model which has some terminology, the definition of processes, so on and so forth. And this whole thing is considered to be a domain model. Now once you have this domain model, the application that you are going to build for that particular domain is going to use concepts and knowledge from this domain model, and then you essentially start designing the particular application that you are supposed to build, right? And this is why the application model is going to use some or all of the information that the domain model provides. Now, in this course, we are only going to target the application modeling, because domain modeling is something that is beyond our our limits. Okay, basically, it is probably done by people who are extremely extremely good with business. Okay, these are people with 10, 15, maybe even more years of experience in a particular industry. So they are the ones who prepare the domain models, and we are the ones who use the domain models and prepare models for our own application. Now, these models that we are going to prepare, they can be of different types. Okay, so let me give you a simple example. In the previous week, we saw this postal example, right? Where we had a letter class and a class, I think, for something like postal service or postal service request, something like this. So what was the idea? That there were two classes, and these two classes were they were not completely independent. I mean, they in our application, let us assume that we are trying to build an postal application. These two classes have some relationship with each other, right? And that relationship between these two classes is something that is captured by the class diagram, or essentially one type of modeling that you are going to do is where you essentially figure out the relationship between the entities of your system. Okay, now once you've done that, the second thing you need to know is, and this is what we did in that in those functions, right? Seal letter function, send post function, deliver post function. So what really happens is these objects do not remain static throughout their life, right? They start with a particular state. When I say state, I mean the values associated with their fields. So they start with a particular state, and then they do state to state transitions. Okay, so something happens and the value of one or more fields change, right? So now essentially this object, or even if you don't understand what is object, at least understand it is more like a structure. Okay, basically an object is structures plus something more. So for now, just try to think about it as structures. State is also applicable to a structure. So there is a structure variable which has some fields. As soon as any of the fields of these of this structure changes, you essentially have a new state. Okay, so the second thing you need to know as a person who's trying to model the behavior of the system is exactly how do these objects change. Because these objects will change because of computation. Some computation happens, and the state of these objects change. So the second type of modeling we do is where we try to capture these transformations, how one state transform to another state. The third type of modeling that we have to do is figure out how these objects interact with each other at the runtime. So what I mean by runtime is something like this. You remember that in order to post a letter, it has to be sealed first, right? And you would have realized that in the classes that we had, seal letter was was a method in the letter class, and send post and deliver post were two methods that were there in the postal service request class, or whatever it was its name. Now, there is an ordering here, right? You will not be able to send a letter until it is sealed, right? So the first thing is, um, first you have to call the seal letter function on the object of type letter. So that is the first state change, right? The state of the letter changes from unsealed to sealed, and then you can start sending it, right? So there is an ordering here, that which state change happens when, right? So this is the third type of modeling that we need to do in order to figure out how my overall system works. So to summarize, the first part is only concerned about the what part, right? So what exactly constitutes my system, my application. The second part is more about the how part, right? So basically, how does my system change its state from one point to another point? And the third part is the when part, that when do my system actually changes, right? I mean, what are the triggers, what are the reasons because of which it happens, number one. And number two, what is the actual ordering, right? I mean, uh, these whole state to state transformations that happen in my object, how does it actually work in the real time? Which event occurs first, which event occurs next, so on and so forth. So in order to model these aspects of an application, we have three different types of modeling and three different types of diagrams. The first type, the what type, is done by the class modeling part, and the diagram that we are going to use is basically the class diagrams. Class diagrams are probably the most used also, because many a times the other aspects of the system are rather clear. If you can simply tell me how do the classes look like, and if the name of the fields and the methods are uh, are chosen in a very good fashion, so that everything is clear just by reading their names or descriptions, then maybe I do not even need to know the state and state transitions or the interactions. But at least, whenever you will be modeling a system, the least that you will probably need is a class diagram. So a class diagram just refers to it just requires capturing the static relationships between the classes. When I mean static, it means that these relationships do not change with time. These are going to be the same, right? uh, if you are going if the postal service request class is having a field of type letter, it is not going to change midway after the code has started running, right? That is not going to change. It is going to be the same, exactly the same. So class modeling refers to basically capturing the static behavior of a system. How do classes relate to each other? And whenever a particular class is associated with another class in some fashion, we call this link between them as association. Okay, so I say this class is associated with this class by this relationship. And there are two special types of relationship, called the part of relationship and the type of relationship. When one entity is part of another entity, I call it the part of relationship. And when one entity is a specialized version of another entity, we call it the type of relationship. What do I mean by this? Let us have a look. So this is an example. Essentially, this is just like a bloated version of the postal service example. I needed to add some more classes to it so that it becomes at least interesting. Otherwise, there would have been just two classes. So I've just tried to bloat this example. I'm saying that this postal request has now become letter postal request, and I'm saying that there is a relationship between this class and this class called abstract postal request. Okay, so what do I mean by abstract postal request? Essentially, the postal department might actually post other stuff as well, right? I mean, not just the letters. They might post packages or things which are really not easily trackable, right? I mean, it could be possible that you're sending something which is not easily trackable. Okay, I don't know whether people actually do that, but let us say you're sending your bike by post, for example, right? I do know that the railways book it from point A to point B. I don't know whether India Post also does that, but for the sake of argument, let us assume that India Post has a service where you can book your bike from Lucknow to Kanpur, and they'll take it from your home and they'll deliver it somewhere. So essentially, the idea is that there can be multiple things that can be posted, and letter is just one of them. So what I've done is I've created a class called abstract postal request, and there are certain things which are going to be applicable to all types of things that this post service can send, right? So there is a request string. So essentially, this is a the unique tracking ID, or unique ID basically, to refer to all the requests that are created. Then the weight of that thing that is being sent, the cost per unit, so different things will have different cost per unit. Maybe paper has a lesser cost per unit value as compared to iron or something like that, right? And then the element that you are sending, it may be falling in different GST slabs, so on and so forth, right? And then I say that all these are also applicable to a letter postal request. In addition, I also need some tracking information, and I also need to provide the letter to post kind of thing. So in some ways, basically the idea here is there are certain properties which are there, which are part of this class. These properties are all copied. These are all applicable to letter postal requests as well. Plus there is something more. It needs something more. So this kind of relationship is also known as the superclass derived class relationship, where what I do is I actually put some properties in the superclass, and then I derive a class out of it. When I say derive, as in this class is going to have all the properties that this class has, plus some more. Okay, so this is a kind of relationship between two classes. We'll study more about it when we study inheritance. From next week, I think we'll study inheritance. But for now, just try to understand the concept that essentially I needed to create a class. Then I realized that this class would not be alone. There might be other classes which are kind of its peers, right? So there might be a parcel postal request or something like that. So then I realized, and then letter postal request and parcel postal request will have a number of things that are common, right? So why not just abstract it out into a different class like this, and then say that these two classes are basically specialized versions of this class. And this is where inheritance comes in. This is the kind of relationship this particular part of the diagram is showing. This is known as the generalization or specialization relationship. So basically, abstract postal request is a generalization of letter postal request, or saying it the other way, letter postal request is a specialization of abstract postal request. And this special type of arrow that you are seeing in this diagram, this shows this particular relationship, the relationship where uh, wherever on the side where you are seeing this hollow triangle, this side is basically the base class, the super class, and this side is going to be the derived class, the class which is deriving properties from this. Then similarly, there's another type of relationship here. Now here you can see it's a diamond. Okay. Now what is happening here is I have this object called tracking info. If you have seen the tracking information that is given on Speed Post's website, it's written row by row, right? Like it starts from your package was sent from the source on this date and this time. Then let's say it was Lucknow. So then the next stop was, let us say, Kanpur. It reached Kanpur on this date and time, and then left Kanpur on this date and time. Then it reached Delhi. So these are the rows, right, that are there in a typical tracking page. So here I'm saying that this tracking info is a kind of an object that is associated with any letter request, any letter that is being requested to be posted. And every row in this tracking information is actually captured by this transit info class. Okay, the city, the receive date, and the dispatch date. And then I'm saying that tracking info for one particular item or one particular class of items essentially consists of an array of transit info objects, right? So there is a relationship between these two classes. Transit info is in some ways a part of tracking info, right? I mean, whenever you create an object of tracking info, there will be objects of type transit info within this. So here, this type of relationship is known as aggregation. We'll study more about aggregation when we start creating class diagrams. But the but this is the part of relationship. This was the type of relationship, and this is the part of relationship. That transit info is a type of tracking info. The second type of modeling is the state modeling. So in state modeling, what we do is we actually create state diagrams. So remember what is state modeling? In state modeling, we have to figure out how does an object change, right? I mean, from one point to another point, what are the actual reasons because of which the object changes, right? So there must be something that happens to it. There must be some event that happened in the real world. For example, the letter, right? If the letter is an object, um, in the when you create the letter, when you write the letter and put it in the envelope, the state is unsealed, and as soon as you seal it, the state becomes sealed. That is the idea, right? It's a very crude idea, but the idea is that there is an object. This object has some fields. When exactly do these fields change? Okay, and this the a kind of a diagram that can capture this is known as state diagram. So in a state diagram, the nodes are essentially the object's states, and the edges are equivalent to some event because of which this state changed, right? And now you might realize that, and by the way, we'll have one state diagram for just one object. Okay, so for each object, for each class type, to be honest, in my system, I will need a state diagram. Now you can see that the problem here is if there are too many classes in my system, it will become tedious to draw these diagrams, right? So in practically speaking, you will not really draw these state diagrams for all the objects, for all the classes, to be honest, right? You'll do it maybe only for the important ones, which are important to represent the behavior. And even when you are doing this state diagram thing, there might be far too many possible states of an object. So you're not going to really document all of these transitions from every state to every other state. You might just do it for the important ones. So this is an example of two state diagrams. It is for that letter object and that abstract postal request object. So you can see what is really happening, that in the beginning the state was unsealed, and then an event happened. What is the event? Seal the letter, and then the state of this letter object becomes sealed. Similarly, for abstract postal request, this represents initial state. Actually, I should have put initial state here as well, but yeah, I mean, as I said, we don't really uh, uh, have any obligations to start from the start state and go up to the end. There is another notation for end state as well, but there is no obligation for us to follow it. For in the case of abstract postal request, as soon as you create an object, we set the sent date and the delivered date to null strings, right, or empty strings. And then whenever the method send the post is called, you change the sent date, and whenever the method deliver the post is called, you change the delivered date. So you can see that this particular object changes its state twice, right? In the beginning, the sent date is, and as well as the delivered date is set to empty strings. Then the sent date changes, and then the delivered date changes. And when do they happen? They happen on these events in the real world. So these events are essentially something that happens in the real world, or in some case it could be like a chain reaction. It starts with a real world event, and then this triggers other events in your system. So but this is the idea, that essentially state of an object, whenever it changes, there has to be some event because of which its state changes, and these state diagrams try to capture that. Yeah, this I have already told you. The third type of diagram that we have, as I said, the first one was for what, the second one was for how. The third one is basically for when, right? So I understand now that in order to, I now understand that for my letter object, these are the two states: sealed, unsealed, and sealed. And there is a transition from here to here when this event happens. Similarly, for my abstract postal request, there are three possible states, okay? And these transitions happen on these events. But as of now, I really don't know how do these two different diagrams relate with each other, right? Is it like seal the letter can happen when the abstract postal request is in this state or this state? No, right? I mean, the seal the letter thing has to be before I can send it. So there is an ordering between these events as well, right? And to capture these ordering, we need some kind of interaction modeling mechanism. So interaction modeling is a very complex task. There are more than one diagrams that are available for us. Use case diagrams, sequence diagrams, activity diagrams. These are all examples of interaction diagrams. The idea of interaction diagrams is you capture the interaction between the objects of your system. That is the idea of an interaction diagram. And usually it is not necessary to create all these diagrams, depending on your own application. The overall idea is just to communicate how this system's objects interact with each other at runtime. You have to communicate it with the people who are going to write code, right? So that is the idea. You may use one or all of these diagrams in order to model it, but the idea is to simply communicate the overall interaction pattern. So this is an example of an interaction diagram. This is actually a sequence diagram. So in a sequence diagram, we show these transitions, and these are, by the way, the objects that are there in my system. And I actually show how these objects interact with each other. Maybe something happens over a particular object, then it triggers an effect on some other object, so on and so forth. The only thing that the sequence diagram is trying to show you is the relative ordering between two events. Okay, so it basically, the send post event will always occur after the seal letter event, and similarly the deliver post event will always occur after the send post event. So this is what a sequence diagram tries to tell you. It doesn't give you an idea of the actual time, by the way. So it doesn't mean that if you start measuring the distances between these arrows. No, these distances are inconsequential. The only thing that sequence diagram tells you is the ordering between the relative ordering between the different events that occur in your system, and how exactly these systems, these events affect your overall objects. So this is an example of an interaction diagram. Okay, now there are other diagrams as well in the interaction modeling realm. There is a diagram to create use cases to express use cases. A use case is essentially a way in which you express what is expected from the system. So you write something like, um, the user goes to the post office, the user seals the letter, the user hands over the letter to the booking agent, whatever it is, right? The booking agent creates a request, so on and so forth. So this is how you define a use case, that this is what I want from my system. Similarly, the activity diagram is very much like a flow chart. You guys have already created some, yeah, you guys have already written some algorithms in the previous semester. I don't think you would have written any flow charts. So when we cover the activity diagram stuff, you realize that they are more like flowcharts. There are if you don't know what a flowchart is, don't be worried. Essentially, it's a diagram which shows the decision making process. At what point of time, what events are fired. This is in some ways the activity diagram tries to show that. Anyhow, so the interaction diagrams, as I said, they cover the when part of the system. The what part is done by the entities, by the class diagrams. The how part is covered by the state diagrams, and the when part is covered by the interaction diagram. So this is the overall gist of the kind of diagrams we are going to study. From next week onwards, we'll start. Maybe not next week. Next to next week, we'll have a class diagram or something like that. So once a week, once every week, out of these three lectures, one lecture I am going to dedicate to modeling part, and the other two is going to be dedicated to the coding and C++, because I understand it will become too boring for you if I simply keep on teaching you theory without any code. So maybe every week, this is what I'm trying to do. One lecture will be dedicated to these modeling lectures, where you learn more about modeling concepts, and then the other lectures, the other two lectures will be about C++ and code and stuff. So anyhow, so this was the boring part of the week. By the way, this is, yeah, sorry, there's one more thing. In some cases you might have something like a loop here. So it means that this is in some ways a kind of an internal state change of this object, but I'm showing this because it might be an important aspect for the overall system as well, right? So this is another way to do it. We'll study all these things when we start with UML, but I want you guys to go and read chapter 1 of this book. I don't know how many of you have bought it already. If you have not, please buy it. It was there in the syllabus. I didn't explicitly ask you to buy it, but yeah, this part is going to be the part from where we are going to cover the modeling part. So if you need to know, if you want to read more on modeling, please buy this book or arrange this book from somewhere, and read at least the chapter 1. The chapter 2 is also very small. It's, I think, 3 or 4 page chapters. So if you go through chapter 1, please go through chapter 2 as well. Total, I think it will be around 20 pages. But if you read through this, you will have a much better understanding of whatever we did today, and of course whatever is going to um, come in future. Okay, despite a late start, we've uh, completed it. Yeah. Okay, let's start then. Any questions? Uh, okay. There is some question, right? Who what exactly did you guys want me to repeat?
So we don't even know who that guy is.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyhow, no issues. um, yeah. Any other questions? We are allowing guests, right? So it's okay. Uh, any questions, guys? By the way, I do understand this is the boring part, uh, because we are not really doing any practice. This is just like some concepts I'm trying to throw at you. But and you have to understand that the title of your course is object oriented modeling and methodology, sorry. So methodology means I have to teach you modeling as well. I checked with the authorities that whether this is going to be just a programming heavy course, or do I need to teach you guys concepts of modeling as well. And I was told that no, I have to cover the modeling concepts. So that is why we are studying all this. That is why I'm asking you to buy that book by James Rambo, because you have to learn some modeling. Okay, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so then please see, I understand it might not be clear right now, but if you read chapter 1 and 2, that will be much more easier for you to appreciate what are these three different types of diagrams, right? And of course we will look at all these diagrams in greater detail in one, at least one more lecture. One for class diagram, one for state diagram, and one for interaction diagram. So we will spend one separate lecture for all of these diagrams, but the overall idea is they cover three different aspects of a system: what, how, and when. Okay, this is the idea, that before building the system you need to capture a lot of information. And this is what we are trying to do right now with the help of diagrams, with the help of documents. We are trying to capture information which will be useful for us once we start writing code. All those queries that you guys have whenever I give you an assignment or a question, and there is something that is unclear. It is unclear because as a person who's giving you the requirements, I have not covered all the aspects of the requirement, right? So when you started writing code, you realized, okay, this part is not yet covered. I need an explanation for this. So that is why you have to ask, what to do in this case, what to do in that case. It's because in a one page assignment, I have not given you enough information to build the system at at question. But this cannot be done with large applications. In large applications, you simply don't start coding before you have an absolutely good view, a good idea of what exactly is it that you are supposed to build. So all this modeling that we are studying, these are basically precursors to code. You need to know how to capture this information so that everything, to the extent it is possible, becomes unambiguous, right? So when you give these documents to a developer who's going to write code, the developer has no or very few questions. So we are going through that process. Okay. Anyhow, any queries? Okay, so we'll just break, right? I mean, I know these lectures are not that interesting, but maybe tomorrow's lecture will probably be more interesting because we'll study some code. Okay, thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.